Hey guys, this is DFD, aka Dark Frozen Deaths, back with another Kamihime project video. Now, first off, I'm kind of sorry for this video being a little bit late. There's a few other things I was looking into, and one of them is pretty major. I'm not sure how many people know about this, but there's currently a bug with the Malicious Raid, so if you happen to get a certain drop, it tends to just lock you into the raid and you can't really do anything else. We've been calling this a raid jail because it's not the first time something like that's happened. But generally speaking, if you are trying to grind for the malicious raids, be wary of that one. Personally, I'd say just wait, because it's a game-breaking bug, and they honestly do need to fix it at some point. I don't know when it's going to happen. They probably already know, but since it's Golden Week, I don't think anybody's there to really work on it, so there's that. But the new Fire Malicious Raid, it has come out, but it's bugged. So anybody trying to grind that right now, you may want to watch on like whatever drops pop up. I'm not sure which drop causes it, but it's one of the more rare ones that will do it. Speaking of, expect an guide video on the Fire Malicious Raid pretty soon, because now that it's out, I'm going to start doing another guide vid for that one. I've got a very good info source for that one, so it's not going to be it's going to be a different page from what you're seeing on screen. It's not going to be the JP Wiki, so there's that. JP Wiki does have info on it, but I found a place that has even better info, so there's that. Now, as for the event that's going on right now, it's a raid event. They did change a little bit of stuff in it, so you may want to double check some of that. Now, the characters that come out for it, they are permanently in the gacha. I managed to get one from sheer luck because she was from the water Kamihime tickets that they currently have right now, where you just do some raids and you get a fire and a water Kamihime weapon. They could be R weapons, but I managed to get her. I managed to get water fluidity from that. But I would easily say that this is the time where you might need to start paying attention to what weapons come off of the Kamihime as well, because some of them are also pretty powerful with effects. That said, I may have to update the weapon skill video too, so there's that. But this event's a raid event. It's based off of those characters. This is like the third time I think Flority's been in the game, but this time she's actually a playable Kamihime, so there you go. I don't know too much about Proofless, but I think she is a pretty good one to use too. I'd have to double check her. But because this is a raid event, you get a free Kamihime as well. It is Dion Set, a SR version of her. If I remember correctly, her kit's pretty good, but nothing compared to what her SSR one is, so there's that. All three versions of her should be permanent at some point anyway, because eventually they'll put an epic quest of this raid event out, so there's that. But because it's a raid event, you can get help from other players. You gotta go through all the storyline in order to start doing your own raids, but you can jump in at any time. Just make sure to actually hit the event page before you start getting souls, because if you did it beforehand, you might lose your progress. That's something that's also kind of weird, but I think is permanently implemented into the game. Now, as for the fights themselves, you need to be a certain rank in order to start them. You need certain materials for that. The event materials, you need like 3 of them to start Ragnarok and 6 of them to start Ragnarok Plus. You have to host and clear your own Ragnarok Plus before you can do Heroic, and you also need rank 100. They recommend 75,000 power for Heroic, but you may or may not need that. It all depends on how strong you are. But this Heroic can be a little bit tricky. It did catch a few people off guard until they learned the mechanics, so we're definitely going over that. As for the event battles themselves, Expert, Ragnarok, and Ragnarok Plus all generally tend to be the same type of enemy AI. It's just that that Flame Prison debuff is going to start doing more damage on a higher difficulty, so remember that. But generally, Raging Mode, it will do a Flame Prison debuff on everybody, which is, it's not the one that prevents your turns, it's the one that damages you over time. And since it's Flame Prison, I do believe it's player set, so well, damage over time wouldn't have been raid wide anyway, unless it's on an enemy. But It's for 2 turns, so you can't just wait it out. You have to literally remove it. Normal, it's just a single target hit on a person. Nothing too special. Just make sure they don't take too much damage. Now, the Furious Anger, what they call it, that can be a lot of damage, so be very careful. And it's the one that when its HP gets the lowest, because when its HP is low, it'll start doing 2 specific triggers. The first one, which is at like half HP, it will nuke everybody and give itself attack up, and it's 6 turns. It's player statted, so you have to get rid of it yourself. Now, when it's at 30% HP, when it's Ragnarok Plus, it can do it again, but at the same time will also do another move where it is AoE fire damage, and it puts a defense buff on itself that can stack. And the reason it stacks is because it will step and do it 4 times tops, as long as its orbs is not full. So if it's not at full orbs, it will start spamming that. So keep that in mind. That said, orb removal might actually be against you in this fight, because it's only got 2 orbs maximum. So when it's enraging, it will generally do it once and then go into its overdrive or burst or whatever you call it. Because I know different people have different things. But personally, this is the time where I would ignore the orb removal. And if you could possibly do it, I would increase the maximum orb count. That would be much more potent. Just to deal with that preserve anger, whatever it is that happens when it's at its lowest HP. So there you go. It's like 20% or less for expert, and it only does it 2 times there. 40% or less for Ragnarok, and 30% or less for Ragnarok Plus. But it's stacking defense up on itself too, that you cannot remove by the looks of it. It says it's permanent. Like, anytime it says permanent for one of these things, I'm assuming you can't remove it. Even then, it's not too much of a problem. You can just stack enough defense down to counter the defense up, if that's possible for you. And water does have a lot of good debuffers too, so you might be able to pull that off. Even if you're not using water, it's basically a raid event, so you can pretty much just use whatever element's best suited for you. Just don't do that in Heroic, because Heroic's going to counter anybody that doesn't have water. That's the first thing. But speaking of Heroic, 160 million HP, that's a lie in a way because of its mechanic. It has an Indomitable buff on itself that you cannot remove. You also cannot use anything like Zombie or Curse or anything like that to cheese it. So it's immune to Curse, it's immune to Zombie, it's immune to maximum orb count, so that's out the window. Then on top of that too, if you are not using water, you can't debuff it. And you're also dealing way less damage, like 90% of your damage is gone if you are not using water. So use water for Heroic. Now, the kicker with this Heroic is the fact that when its HP hits 1, it will remove the Indomitable buff, and then fully heal itself. But the catch is that it also starts using a different type of attack, where you start getting hit with 15,000 damage. Like, the second time its HP gets low, you'll start getting hit with 15,000 damage when its health gets low enough. The fact that what changes its kit for the most part is if it has that Indomitable buff or not. Because the first time when it has that Indomitable buff, if its HP hits 10% or less, you have to get it to 1% HP or you will die. So be very, very careful of that. It says activate end of rage this turn. What that means is the minute it hits 10% or less HP, you have 1 turn to empty out the rest of it and get it to use Indomitability. And I'll explain what end of rage does a little bit later, but that is the most dangerous thing in this fight. Be careful of that. Now, it also alternates what it does on its burst, because it will do a single target nuke on its first burst, and then it will change it to AoE right after that. So it kind of like alternates between the two bursts, even though it's not based on mode gauge. So be careful of that. You will take AoE nukes even if you're not in raging. And of course, HP hits 1% or less or whatever. It just won't die with the Indomitable. That's the thing. But it will fully heal itself. So in a sense, it has 320 million HP you have to go through, not 160 million. Then on top of that too, after the Indomitable is gone, and if its HP is 15% or less, it will nuke it. It will nuke somebody for 15,000 damage, and then do enough damage to itself to where it loses like 10% of its HP. So that's something to know. So if you happen to get it within the 10% range, I think that's like an instant win on a fight. But and I'm not exactly sure this in the rage happens for the last 10% on the time it doesn't have the Indomitable. But if it does have the Indomitable, you have to make sure End of Rage does not go off. If it goes off, that is the failure trigger. It does 100,000 fixed damage, removes all your buffs before it even does the damage. And considering that you are most likely going to see your team die off of that one, it will keep spamming it, because whenever your player count is 4 or less, like whenever you have 4 or less alive characters, it will keep spamming it. So you still have to be careful. Because if you lose too many characters, if you lose 3 characters, you will indeed start seeing this spammed, and that's a failure. So make sure your party stays at 5, or if you have sub-characters, of course, have them alive too, but make sure you do not have 4 or less on the field. If you do, that's basically game over. So keep that in mind. But the biggest thing about this fight is the fact that you're seriously trying to nuke a lot of its health the first time. That 10% or less means you have to deal upwards to about 16 million damage in one shot. That's a full burst if you built your team up. But just be careful of that. The second time around, it looks like it doesn't do it again, but you still have to be careful with somebody getting smacked for 15,000. Because if they get killed off and you're down to 4 people, you are going to get smacked with End of Rage. Like, if you are at 4 people at any point in the fight, you get smacked with End of Rage. And it's basically the end of the fight. So, there you go. They did recommend some souls for this, too. They said Yori, because you can sip and break through that first 10% with a full burst anyways. Hector is a good rage punish for that, too. Paracelsus, because, you can do, like, a lot of normal attack damage with her as well. So that's something to know. And of course, the usuals, you can probably sip and try and keep your team alive with Romulus as Calyptus. They don't need to keep suggesting them. They're, like, good for almost anything. My personal suggestion, Caspar would probably be a good one too, because she does a lot of everything. She can sip and buff your team, she can heal them. She can spam a little bit of ability damage too if you set her up right, if you want to do it that way too. Like, she's a jack of all trades, but she does her job well, so I suggest Caspar as well. I don't think anybody's using Paracelsus for Parashurama. I don't think anybody's using Parashurama on their own for this fight, because there's some that like to solo with just her. I believe it's impossible to do because of the 4 Hime or less thing, so you're not going to solo with her. But she is a good soul to use for the team, so that's another suggestion. Characters they suggest for this is a lot. The new one, Fluidity, she does additional damage if she stacked enough buffs on herself. There's a specific buff she does, and it is like a 10 times nuke, so it's like on Medea level. Oh, and that's another thing I suggest too. If you use Medea for the heroic, save her triple cast until you get to like the first 10% HP mark, because that will really help for that. But Fluidity can do a lot of ability damage. He also stacks defense down, so that helps too. So I personally like using her on the JP side. I'm glad I pulled her on the Nutaku one too. They've awakened Ryuo. She's very good for debuffing. I don't know if she has anything else that's kind of special with it, but her debuffs are like, I think 30% now, something like that. But a lot of attack and defense down from just her alone, so she could be helpful. Water Jupiter, very, very good all across the board. Definitely should be using her if you have her. I don't think she should leave your team if you have her. Vahu's also kind of good too for this because of the defense down and all that. And then she can also do like normal attacks immediately, so that can help out. For Brewis, the fight doesn't do that much heavy damage except for like a few specific cases, so she can block most of the damage that you're taking just with her barrier. So that's something to know. Of course, that's assuming you have attack down, so remember that. Poseidon, she's a very good defensive Hime for all fire content, so there you go. Ashraya, good for burst. Shiva, just good for buffing in general. They suggest Raphael because of the fact that she's got a damage cut and she can also debuff. Personally, I suggest you do that too anyways. They say with her and Ryuo, that's a 45% total. It's not the max, but you get it with like 2 characters. So if you've awakened Ryuo and use Raphael, that's all the debuffing you really need. Aphrodite because of the combo rate, but either her or Nikke still helps. They don't mention the limited ones too much, but I remember Water Diana being very, very good, and she's practically like the best healer until we get Phoebe later on, so there you go. And you may get some use out of Saraswati from what they're saying, so there's her too. But she's like single target. So remember that. She like buffs herself and then buffs somebody else. Now then for the event rewards, same stuff. 300 souls of each in order to get everything. If you're after the magic jewels, you need 225 blue and 150 red. So quite a bit of a grind. And I suggest you get at least the magic jewels, but personally I'd say get the 300 and 300. Maybe even go beyond it. Raid events are very good times to stock up on a lot of stuff, so go for that. Now, as for the stuff that you can get from this event, the Eidolon itself isn't that bad. They don't show the stats and all that for some reason, but I can also go on their screens and show it. But the Eidolon itself is not that bad because it is 40% elemental attack for fire, combo rate increase for everybody. If you summon her mid-fight, she reduces the chances you get debuffed because she increases your resistance towards it. She could have some uses. I know a lot of annoying crap can go on in Bether Plus for the debuffs, so she might actually be a good subslot for that. But main slot, she's upping your combo rate, which does tend to be pretty helpful. And then she's also giving you elemental attack. She's not bad. I wouldn't say she's a must-have, but she's not bad. Now, as for the SSR weapon, this is something that should be remembered, regardless of how many videos I do or anything like that. But the Advent and the Raid events always have a weapon that will final break that goes into 1 large skill and 1 medium skill. These are better than the ultimate catastrophe raid weapons. In this case, this happens to be large assault, medium defender. But these are always better than the ultimate catastrophe raid, so if you have any ultimate catastrophe raid weapons, you are most likely getting an event weapon. Keep that in mind. If you do happen to use this on a soul, and I don't see why, but you could, it has that flame prison debuff, so there you go. The only SR weapon that they have in these type of events now, because it's changed, is the SR event weapon that will release the free character. You don't need to use this. And it's not even sure which one it gives on the wiki, but you don't need to use the SR weapons. SR weapons are outdated. Now, there's also grails you can get to. Those will help your skills and all that type of stuff, so of course get them. Because honestly, skill experience is pretty hard to come by, so definitely get as much as the grails and all that stuff as you can. Now, they suggested using Light Attribute for the Ragnarok fight, for getting that tickets. I don't know why the coloring is green on that, because you definitely shouldn't be using wind. They never make you do disadvantage. But I believe it's white in order to use for the Ragnarok solo, so there's that. Experts, the same stuff. Are Kamihime only. And then Ragnarok Plus, you just solo however you can. So there you go. And that's more raid tickets for you. Now, last thing I need to go over to, I gotta scroll way up because they put her like way at the top. Free Kamihime, of course. And she might actually be useful for people that don't seem to have a thunder healer. But her deal with this, she is essentially single target healing, but she also generates potions. That's what makes her good. Because the whole thing with this is the fact that even though she is a single target healer, every 3 ability uses she is generating a potion. I mean, not every 3, every 5 ability uses she's generating a potion. So you can start stacking up potions in long fights. Her SSR version does it even better. Like both SSR versions of Fire and the Thunder SSR. But you get her for free, so you have another potion maker, basically. And the reason why I say that's better because of the fact that when it comes to healing in this game, there is a limit to all of the heals that you get from characters, except for maybe 1 or 2. So they'll have a cap on their healing, and that's where Ascension kicks in to boost that cap. Potions do not have a healing cap, so no matter how much HP you get, potions will heal a lot. In fact, it is entirely possible later on, because now that we got the Malicious Raids, it's entirely possible later on for free-to-play players to have like 30,000-40,000 HP. By then, healing isn't going to do that much, and that's where the potions are coming in. They will help you out, so that's something to know. But honestly, she's definitely a good free Kamihime to use. Her single target heals isn't that good normally, but her burst will double the effect of them. It's the potions that really make her really good for that. So that's something to remember. But anyways, that's all for this. More of this will come soon because I'm probably going to be able to clear this heroic. It does seem pretty easy. But anyways, that's all for this. More will come soon, and take care.